Okay, so question number 8 on your homework assignment is, if an enzyme binds the transition state 50 times more tightly than the substrate, i.e. the equilibrium constant is 50 times greater, then by what factor does the enzyme accelerate the reaction? Based solely on the preferential binding of the transition state. All right, so what you're going to want to think about here is we have this one equation in our text, Ke over Kn is equal to Kt over Kr. All right, this is the equation you're going to want to use to solve this question. Now, the question is asking us about the relative affinity of the enzyme binding the substrate versus binding the transition state. So over here, all right, Kr is basically how tightly our enzyme binds the substrate. It's the reaction of E plus S giving us our ES complex. All right, so Kr is that equilibrium constant. Now Kt, this is the equilibrium constant for the enzyme binding to the transition state. So we already have the transition state formed, and the enzyme is binding to this. So that the question now is saying that if the enzyme binds a transition state 50 times more tightly than the substrate, right? Well, what does that mean mathematically? Well, that means that Kt, right? So think about the affinity of our enzyme binding the transition state here. Right? Kt is going to be equal to 50 times Kr, the affinity for the substrate. Now, if we plug those numbers in, so if we substitute for Kt 50 Kr, all right, we get the ratio, these Ks over here, those are a rate constant. So this is telling us about how the relative rate of our enzymatic reaction versus our non-enzymatic reaction. All right, so if we plug in for Kt 50 Kr, the Krs are going to cancel, and we're going to get Ke over Kn equals 50. That means our enzymatic reaction is 50 times faster than our non-enzymatic reaction.